it's should we talk about Indy 500? And well, we're a month away, and already we have Indy 500 controversy, and no, it has nothing to do with J.R. Hildebrand coming back.
Yeah, because
you mean we're not talking for like 20 minutes about the fact that the glorious mullet himself, J.R. Hildebrand, is back?
Stanford
I
University educated J.R. Hildebrand.
Boy.
But no, we're here to talk about powerful team owners Roger Penske, Chip Ganassi, and Michael Andretti coming out and saying that full-time teams in the IndyCar series should have guaranteed starting spots in the Indianapolis 500.
yes, in separate interviews, all three team owners have come out in defense of this.
Oh boy, I had a feeling this might cause some debate, and we know there's many a prominent IndyCar personality up and down social media and on the internet, and I saw the early reaction, and it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. How dare Penske, Andretti, and Ganassi, the big boys, all talk about guaranteed places? And I sat back and I watched most of this go by, and I honestly sat there and I went, it's not quite as simple as that, is it? And
no. This is also coming off of, it's not that, the Speedway said, like the Speedway of the series said that they're going to do this. No one has brought this up except, like, journalists who've asked these questions, because obviously there are going to be more than 33 cars trying to qualify this year. And especially after what happened last year, they brought the prospect of the team owners, and the team owners gave their honest opinion on the matter.
Right, and if you're Roger Penske, Michael Andretti, or Chip Ganassi, why the hell would you not want guaranteed spots for your cars? Especially when we all know during the 500 they run more cars than they normally do. I mean, Penske had 5 last year. I think Andretti had 6 last year. And
the thing is, they're not asking that all their cars get a guaranteed spot, just the full-time cars.
And, like, if you're a big team, why the hell would you not say that? Why would you not want a guaranteed spot? It's like, I know people are gonna obviously boil piss about this, which I get. No one wants the big guy to succeed. I get that, right? And of course, the argument of, well, everybody was a small team at some point, and they could directly go against this sort of rule, but now they've made it. It's like, well, let's turn our back on the little guy. Yeah, you'd be doing the exact same thing if you're in Roger Penske's shoes. I guarantee you that. It's business. I said it's a good friend of the show, Henry, who isn't here tonight, but he's a regular listener. I said to him, listen, like, it's business. You probably shouldn't take it personally, and it's, of course, it's going to piss people off because, like, especially given, well, last year we had such a thrilling bump day. The late drama of trying to get a last run in, and Pipperman and James Hinchcliffe missing the cut. Oriol Servia was on the bubble pretty much the entire way through. It was brilliant. It was captivating. It was emotional. It was heartbreaking. It was brilliant television. It was sports at its finest. And if you're a fan, I can also see that side of the coin as well, where it's like you want the entertainment of a bump day, and you want the potential shock of a big name not making it. I mean, look how emotional we got when Hinchcliffe didn't make it last year.
This is one of the big races where you're not guaranteed to make it. In the Daytona 500, you're pretty much guaranteed to make it in, mostly because, well, there's the charter system. You're guaranteed a spot on the grid if you're a full-time team, pretty much. There's Le Mans invitation only. So the ACO handpicks you to run its race if you can last all the way to June without writing off your car. Formula One has not had a situation where it's had to send cars home in almost 25 years.
Yeah, and especially when it was a full-timer and arguably one of the most likeable and popular guys in the sport, who was the victim last year in James Hinchcliffe. And that got a lot of people talking. They was talking about whether what's his name now? Jay Howard was gonna drop his spot. Mm-hmm. There was talking about whether they could maybe buy somebody's seat out and put James in there for one race. it was drama, and it became the talk of the 500 for that weekend, I would argue, more than anything else. I don't think you want to lose that. And it's kind of crazy that even Pippa Mann, who was the direct victim of this last year, came out and said, you can't get rid of Bump Day.
Right.
It's too big a tradition, and it's part of the spectacle.
Right. The one thing that's come up is the 25-8 rule. Now, for those of you who may not know your IndyCar history, the 25-8 rule was originally proposed around 1996 when the Indy Racing League, which is what IndyCar is now, broke away from what was the Kart World Series. And what they were effectively trying to do was guarantee a place on the grid for their full-time teams who were running on much smaller budgets at the time, trying to guarantee them a place on the grid because now they had control of the race. But you have to understand that these were mostly hobbyist teams. There were a few big teams that made the jump, like AJ Foyt Enterprises, but not a whole lot of huge outfits. But now it's now coming from the guys that the Indy Racing League originally was trying to keep out.
Yeah. So like the eight trying to get in, it was pretty much, Ganassi, Penske, and, Team Green, which eventually became, Andretti Autosport.
Right, you could use Newman Haas as a then equivalent.
Yeah, them, all the big teams just trying to fight for 8 spots. Now it's the other way around.
Where Penske, Ganassi, and Andretti wouldn't have to worry about it, but all your part-time entries would have to fight for just 8 spots on the grid.
And it sucks on that side because for a lot of smaller teams and a lot of smaller outfits, this is their one big race. This is their entire investment here going into one race and the chance to stand out, win that big prize money and sell some product.
I think that's where the issue for the big teams comes in. It's about the prize money. And I did a bit of digging, and the most recent year that I could find all the data that I needed was 2015 when Juan Pablo Montoya won the Indianapolis 500. And the way pretty much the Indy 500 has a separate prize purse than the rest of the series completely. And
right.
So for winning the Indianapolis 500 that year, the winner's share that went to Juan Pablo Montoya, which he split among him and, Penske, he won $2.4 million.
Yikes.
The bare minimum, I'm not counting, so the rest of the series, each full-time car that year got 1.2, $1.25 million for being a full-time car in the IndyCar series.
What? I had no idea that was a thing.
If there's, bonuses for where you finish in the standings, but you have to finish, they only give out bonuses for champion through 12th in the standings. They're also, very, very, very small race win bonuses. So, if you say you win the race in Detroit the week after, the bonus you get for winning that race is $30,000.
That's a drop in the bucket.
So if you win the series championship, you do get an additional $1 million. So you get 1.2 million. You get $2.2 million. Yeah, $2.2 million if you're the series champion.
And also,
so as Cam just points out,
also think about this though. If you have only 8 wild card entries in the Indianapolis 500, that means hypothetically, if we were to apply it retroactively for this year, you'd have a spot where Elio Castroneves and Fernando Alonso are fighting for the last spot of the grid, and one of them has to go home.
Yeah.
And a big team would never want that to happen. That's a big meal ticket. Elio is a massive deal. Fernando is an ultra massive deal to McLaren and obviously what they're trying to do. I mean, as many people know, it's a matter of when McLaren goes into IndyCar full time, by Zach Brown's own words. It is kind of crazy though that as Cam pointed out on the Discord server, it's basically an entire a 500 alone is a full season's worth of wins and the championship.
Yep.
And we saw that. I mean, look at it this way: Simon Pagenaud, who won the championship, was it 2 years ago now, right? He won 7 races that season. Like, the bonuses for winning was only 200 grand when it's 2.4 for winning the 500. Again, okay, he gets $1 million bonus for winning the championship. That's still barely half of what you would get for winning the 500. Now I can totally see why big teams want to protect themselves here, because that is such a massive amount of money. That's ludicrous.
Yeah, because like when you're telling the teams not to fight for guaranteed spots in the 500, you're literally asking them to throw away. Like, say you finish midfield, you get $1 million. Like, that's the same amount if you just show up for the full year in the rest of the series.
That's probably the reason why you get so many part-time entrants just running the 500, because hey, if you get into the top 12, you're probably making your money back.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's crazy. And we all know the 500 can throw out some shocks, and more often than not, you will get a wild card guy in the top 10. I mean, look at guys like Max Chilton, who was 4th a couple of years ago, or Ed Jones, or Charlie Kimball, who have had, podium top 4 finishes at the 500 the last 2 or 3 years.
And
it's
because of that imbalance, that's why you only see part-timers at the 500. You rarely see, like, if you see someone doing a partial season, either, number one, they're filling in for, they're basically being a part-time driver in a full-time car, or they're almost doing an entire season plus the Indianapolis 500. They're probably only missing a handful of races.
Yeah, to be honest, nobody's showing up part-time just to run the Texas 500.
Yeah.
No. Well, for 30 grand if you win? No thanks. No, and this is the other problem I wanted to get to as well. The state of the championship. This race carries double points.
Which, it's even worse.
It's double points, and until this year, we had a full race worth of points just for qualifying. You could argue it's triple points,
Yep.
For the 500. It's triple points on that one round, effectively. So, again, it's another reason why, hey, if you have a bad 500, it's going to wreck your entire championship. Like, for example, Hinchcliffe last year, another example, missed the 500, probably would have been top 6 in the championship last season if it weren't for the fact he got bumped. Like, if you're a team like SBM who's on the rise and had Robert Wickens last year, who was, capable of winning races, if you're telling me you're yanking him out of a race that's worth 150 points over the course of the week, like, I can't blame big teams for thinking, you know what, I've got to protect my shit here, because if we have a bad weekend, or if we get bumped, our season's over with that driver, effectively.
Right. Could you imagine what would have happened if Al Unser Jr. had made the Indianapolis 500 in 1995? He'd probably won back-to-back titles, and we wouldn't be talking about Jacques Villeneuve as a double champion of IndyCar and Indianapolis 500 that year. That's like the last time anybody remembers Penske getting bumped out of the 500. Of course, it's a much different game back there. It wasn't a spec formula in 1995. It wasn't a spec engine formula.
But the thing is, like, I understand, like, we've covered, why there shouldn't be guaranteed spots, and we've understand, like, why the teams want guaranteed spots. There is also another resolution to this. Lower the amount of prize money for the 500 and give it to the teams that compete at the other rounds.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. If you lower the prize money, if you cut the double points, then somebody somewhere out there is going to make it like, you want the Indianapolis 500 to matter less and less. You're just doing what CART was trying to do in the mid-90s, and that's why we had the Indy Racing League pop up to begin with, because they thought that CART was trying to minimize the importance of the Indianapolis 500.
But that's
let's be real here. Who wants to be the guy to release the press release saying we're taking money out of the 500?
Yeah, could you imagine like how nuclear things would get if the WC proposed, all right, Le Mans is now a 6-hour race just like all our other events?
But that was like the defining motive of Dan Gurney and the rest of CART, that they can't base their entire season around one race. It's financially not viable to hire employees for an entire year for 1 month of the year. Like, pretty much.
If you're McLaren, yes. If you're Jonathan Bird Racing, no.
It's like you have to make the rest of the season worth it, or this is not a business. Like, you can't do this as a professional. You're basically an amateur outfit doing this semi-professionally.
And that's why every side of the argument is pissed off. If you're a small team, of course you don't want a smaller chance to run the 500, given for many part-timers it's their flagship event. For the bigger teams, you're losing a dog in the fight, and you want as many guys in there as you can realistically run to have, like Andretti with 6 cars, or Chip having 4 or 5, or Penske having the dream team of 5 the last couple of years as well. If you're a smaller team, of course, it's harder to get in, it's harder to perform, and there's less guarantees, so you're fighting an uphill battle in that sense.
But in a way, you are taking a product away from the fans. Instead of getting 20 quality events with one landmark race, you're just getting one very, very massive event, which pretty much the other races just advertise that one massive event.
You don't believe me? Look at the TV ratings of the Indianapolis 500 compared to every other event on the calendar.
Yeah.
We are talking about a barber round that just had a 0.3 rating.
Yeah, where pretty much all the other races are struggling to get half a point, while the Indianapolis 500 easily every year at least a 1.5.
And this is in the down years of the sport's popularity.
Yeah, it's...
Actually, I have the media guide from '94 right next to me, so I could get the TV ratings for Nigel Mansell's last season in Indy. Well,
Mario Andretti's last Indy 500 as well.
Yeah.
The year of the Penske Steamroller, and what did that race pull on the television on ABC Sports?
Oh, give me 1 second. That's on page.
Drum roll, please, kids.
I can edit this out in post. It's fine.
We're keeping this.
Okay, so TV ratings for 1993. Let's see. TV ratings for 93. Indianapolis pulled an 8.5. Next weekend in Milwaukee, they pulled a 2.4. And that is that's 2.4 is pretty much the average for the rest of the year. Phoenix had a 3.3.
Phoenix!
Pretty much all the rounds that weren't, so pretty much the championship, the last 6 rounds of the championship weren't on broadcast TV. They were all on ESPN. Only one round pulled above a 2, and the championship finale pulled a 0.7.
Jesus Christ. So yeah, it's almost like you can't blame IndyCar for putting all their eggs in one basket, but that basket is causing half the problem.
Yeah. And the reason why they do this is because back in the 60s, when they were first removed, it didn't really matter to them, but when they were first removed from the World Championship schedule, pretty much it was a bit of a kick in their behind to realize that we need to do something to, make this one race, one of the international marquee events. And their plan was pretty much, hey, what if we made this this race have the biggest prize of any race in the world? And it worked for all the 1960s. Problem was, it wiped out every other race in the country.
Oh boy. Not ideal business practice.
Yeah, they tried some ways to get around this, the rookie orientation program we have today. It used to be a lot more wider spread, and you had to compete in other races to pass rookie orientation. So we got to see the likes of Jim Clark race at the Milwaukee Mile.
God, that would have been awesome. Yeah, for reference, it'd be like, oh, hey, I want to start up a fighting or a boxing promotion. I know, we'll go on pay-per-view as everybody's going streaming.
Yeah. So,
Christ,
that's how they're able to keep some of the more prestigious venues on the calendar, like the Milwaukee Mile and other mile tracks along. But as soon as they started, closing. Making rookie orientation more about just the speedway itself, pretty much everything faded off into the background. The Milwaukee Mile's not even on the calendar anymore.
So I think are we all in agreement that we don't really want there to be guaranteed entries at the Indianapolis 500?
Oh, no one wants that? No one wants that at all. But it's the easiest solution.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's like F1 team orders. It's kind of a necessary evil here to keep the business afloat. Because to be fair, the way the series is, you have to look after the big teams to a degree. Because if the big teams start collapsing and kicking up a stink, you've got no foundation for the series to run off of. Yeah. So, like in principle, I don't want guaranteed spots. But I also kind of accept that the way the sport is calibrated right now, you need to protect the big teams. And that probably is the easiest and probably the least bothersome way of doing it, unfortunately.
Yeah, because if just those 3 teams left the series, you're leaving a massive hole in the field.
It's half the grid.
Yeah.
At least. So it's about 60% of the full-time grid, and I get it. You can't just run one race a year. You've got to have a full-time calendar. And I know the full-time... you need to make the full-time calendar more desirable, but that can't happen because no one's watching these races anyway.
Because of what... it was kind of like a vicious circle where because of how much you valued this one race, literally the rest of the calendar suffers and barely any... It's not marketable because you just use it as free ad time for the 500.
Yeah, it's crazy. And... yeah, it's a perpetual feedback loop, and it's not healthy for anybody involved. It's not healthy for the sport in that sense, but it kind of has to be done. It's self-preservation more than anything else. And now I've got a strange desire to watch The Italian Job. This is the Self-Preservation Society.
But yeah, pretty much we're back at where we were in the late 70s, where the big teams were not satisfied, and they all left and made their own series.
We're taking our balls and going home.
Yeah, they took their balls and made kart, and
then the Speedway took its ball and then it went home. So
and realized this. Yeah, it's like at some point the fact that the IndyCar series is not only centered around the Indianapolis 500, it's owned by the Speedway itself. It's not good.
All we're doing is just rehashing old wrestling storylines from like 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's not healthy, folks.
It's like, Chip Ganassi's the new Dan Gurney.
Oh, Lord.